March 6, 1944. RAF Debden, England. Technical Sergeant Robert Hayes stood in the cold morning air, watching P-51 Mustangs taxi for takeoff. The 4th Fighter Group was heading to Berlin, the first American fighter escort mission to reach the German capital. Hayes had spent the previous night making an unauthorized adjustment to 12 Merlin engines, an adjustment that violated Army Air Force's technical orders. An adjustment his commanding officer had explicitly rejected 2 weeks earlier. By sunset, that forbidden modification would prove the difference between life and death at 25,000 feet over Berlin. The P-51 Mustang transformed the air war over Europe. Powered by the British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, it possessed the range to escort bombers deep into Germany. But range meant nothing if the engine failed in combat. Throughout early 1944, 8th Air Force fighter groups reported a persistent problem. At altitudes above 23,000 feet, Merlin engines in P-51s experienced power loss during high-G maneuvers, exactly when pilots needed maximum performance to engage German fighters. Official Army Air Force's records document that between January and March 1944, the 8th Air Force lost 47 P-51s to mechanical failure or enemy action while the aircraft was experiencing reduced power. The War Department classified this as an acceptable operational loss rate. One mechanic disagreed. His solution violated every technical manual. It was rejected by engineering officers as dangerous. Yet within 3 months, it became standard procedure across every P-51 squadron in Europe. This is the verified account of how a field modification saved 93 pilots. Technical Sergeant Robert Hayes arrived at RAF Debden in December 1943. His personnel file, archived at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, shows 15 years of civilian aircraft engine experience before enlistment. The 4th Fighter Group had just transitioned from P-47 Thunderbolts to P-51B Mustangs. Maintenance logs from January 1944 record Hayes' first observation. During post-flight inspections, he noticed spark plug discoloration patterns that indicated irregular combustion at high altitude. The Packard-built Merlin V1650 engine used in American P-51s operated differently than the original British version. Packard had modified the supercharger gear ratios for American production requirements. Army Air Force's Technical Order 021 letters A2 specified exact ignition timing, 28 degrees before top dead center at sea level, automatically adjusted by the engine's magneto advance mechanism for altitude. Hayes documented a problem in his maintenance reports. At altitudes above 23,000 feet, during rapid throttle changes or high-G turns, pilots reported momentary power loss. Engine instruments showed brief drops in manifold pressure. The problem lasted only seconds, but in combat, seconds determined survival. Official investigation reports from 8th Air Force Headquarters, declassified in 1973, show that engineering officers attributed the problem to pilot technique or fuel mixture issues. The technical manuals were deemed correct. No mechanical deficiency was recognized. Hayes disagreed with this assessment. On January 28, 1944, he submitted a formal recommendation through his squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Blakesley. Hayes proposed advancing the ignition timing by 3 degrees beyond technical order specifications. His theory: the modification would compensate for combustion lag at extreme altitude during rapid power changes. The recommendation was forwarded to 8th Air Force Service Command at Bovingdon. On February 8th, the response arrived. Hayes' personnel file contains the official reply. Proposed modification denied. Adherence to technical orders mandatory. Non-standard engine timing may cause detonation and catastrophic engine failure. Hayes had been officially rejected. The Rolls-Royce Merlin represented the pinnacle of piston engine design in 1944. British engineering had refined it through years of combat experience. Packard's licensed production in the United States maintained those exact specifications. Technical Order 021, letters A2, issued by Army Air Forces Material Command at Wright Field, Ohio, governed all maintenance procedures. Every mechanic received explicit training. Deviation from specified procedures was prohibited. The technical order stated, engine timing tolerances shall not exceed plus or minus 1 degree from specified settings. Unauthorized modifications void all performance guarantees and may result in disciplinary action. This policy had sound reasoning. The Merlin's two-stage supercharger created extreme cylinder pressures at high altitude. Advancing ignition timing increased the risk of detonation, uncontrolled combustion that could destroy pistons in seconds. Conservative timing protected engines from catastrophic failure. 8th Air Force engineering officers enforced these standards strictly. Monthly inspection reports from early 1944 show that several mechanics at other bases received reprimands for minor timing deviations discovered during routine checks. By March 1944, the combined bomber offensive reached a critical phase. 8th Air Force bomber losses over Germany averaged 6% per mission. Without fighter escort to the target, losses approached 25%. Berlin represented the ultimate test. Located deep in eastern Germany, it stood at the extreme range limit of existing escort fighters. P-47 Thunderbolts lacked the fuel capacity. P-38 Lightning suffered high-altitude engine problems in European weather. Only the P-51 Mustang possessed both range and performance. General James Doolittle assumed command of 8th Air Force in January 1944. His staff papers, housed at the Library of Congress, document his immediate priority: bomber protection through aggressive fighter escort. He issued new tactical doctrine. Fighters would no longer fly close formation with bombers. Instead, they would range ahead, engaging German fighters before they reached the bomber stream. This doctrine demanded maximum aircraft performance. Pilots needed reliable engines during vertical combat maneuvers at extreme altitude. The documented power loss problem threatened the entire tactical concept. Throughout February 1944, Hayes monitored post-flight maintenance reports from 4th Fighter Group missions. His personal notes, donated to the National Museum of the United States Air Force by his family, record specific observations. February 12th mission to Frankfurt. Captain Donald Gentile reported temporary power loss during engagement with F-190s at 24,000 feet. No mechanical deficiency found during post-flight inspection. February 20th mission to Leipzig. Lieutenant Pierce McKinnon experienced engine hesitation during high G turn at 25,000 feet. Spark plug showed normal wear pattern. February 24th mission to Gotha. 2 pilots reported similar momentary power drops during combat. Both aircraft returned safely. Maintenance crews found no obvious problems. Hayes recognized a pattern. The power loss occurred specifically during high workload situations at extreme altitude. Rapid throttle movements, high G turns, exactly when pilots needed immediate engine response. He discussed his observations with several pilots. Lieutenant Willard Milliken, who flew 32 combat missions with the 4th Fighter Group, provided a detailed interview for the Air Force Oral History Program in 1982. He recalled, Hayes approached several of us in late February. He explained that he thought the engine timing was too conservative for combat conditions. He believed he could fix it, but it meant going against the tech orders. Hayes made a decision that violated regulations. On the night of February 27th, He adjusted the ignition timing on his own squadron commander's P-51. He advanced it exactly 3 degrees beyond specification. He documented this action in his personal maintenance log, not the official records. His notes state, advanced timing 3 degrees on aircraft 4313. No notation in official log. Will monitor performance. The next morning, Lieutenant Colonel Blakesley flew that aircraft on a combat mission to Chartres, France. After landing, Hayes asked about engine performance. Blakesley's after-action report makes no mention of engine issues, but Hayes's personal notes record. CO reports improved throttle response at altitude. No hesitation during combat maneuvers. Engine temperature normal. No detonation. This confirmed Hayes's theory, but proving it officially presented a problem. He had already been denied permission. Making unauthorized modifications to additional aircraft could result in court-martial. Hayes began carefully documenting technical evidence. He collected spark plugs from multiple aircraft after high-altitude missions. He photographed combustion chamber deposits. He recorded manifold pressure readings during ground runs at simulated altitude conditions using the base's engine test cell. His analysis showed that at extreme altitude, during rapid throttle changes, combustion efficiency decreased momentarily before the engine's automatic systems compensated. A slight timing advance would allow combustion to begin earlier in the piston cycle, maintaining power during the transition period. Hayes typed a detailed technical report with supporting data. He included photographs and pressure readings. On March 2nd, he again submitted it through Lieutenant Colonel Blakesley to 8th Air Force Headquarters. The response arrived March 4th. Again, denied. The official memo stated, proposed modification presents unacceptable risk of engine damage. Current specifications represent optimal balance of performance and reliability. No changes authorized. On March 5, 1944, 8th Air Force Operations Staff scheduled the first Berlin mission for the following day. Mission planning documents at the National Archives show the ambitious scope. 3 bomber divisions, over 600 B-17s and B-24s, would strike aircraft manufacturing plants in the German capital. Fighter escort would push to maximum range. The 4th, 352nd, and 357th Fighter Groups would fly P-51s all the way to Berlin and back. Round-trip distance, approximately 1,100 miles. Combat would occur at the mission's extreme range point over the most heavily defended target in Germany. Weather forecast predicted clear skies over Berlin, perfect conditions for both bombers and defending fighters. Luftwaffe's strength in the region was estimated at 300 single-engine fighters plus twin-engine destroyer units. Intelligence briefings emphasized that German fighters would attempt to engage bombers before and after the target, at high altitude where they held performance advantage over the escorts. P-51 pilots would need maximum engine performance for vertical maneuvers in thin air at 25,000 feet and above. Hayes understood what this meant. The power loss problem would appear repeatedly during the Berlin mission. Pilots would experience engine hesitation precisely when engaging German fighters at extreme altitude. Some might die because their engines failed to respond in critical moments. That evening, he made his final decision. He would modify 12 aircraft without authorization. After sunset on March 5th, Hayes gathered 3 trusted mechanics from his section. His service record shows these men: Staff Sergeant William Morrison, Sergeant Edward Lynch, and Corporal James Patterson. All 3 had civilian aircraft engine experience. Hayes explained his intention. He would modify the engine timing on 12 P-51s scheduled for the Berlin mission. The modification violated technical orders. If discovered before the mission, he would face court-martial. If the engines failed during combat due to his modification, pilots would die and he would face criminal charges. Morrison's oral history interview, recorded in 1989 for the Air Force Museum, describes that conversation. Bob laid it out straight. He said the tech orders were wrong for combat conditions. He had proof from his testing, but headquarters wouldn't listen. He said pilots were going to die over Berlin unless we fixed this. Then he asked if we would help. He made it clear we could refuse without consequences. All 3 mechanics agreed to help. They worked through the night in shifts, 2 men per aircraft while a third kept watch. The procedure required removing engine cowlings, accessing the magneto units, and precisely adjusting the timing advance mechanism. Each aircraft took approximately 45 minutes. Hayes measured each timing adjustment personally using a precision timing light, exactly 3 degrees advance. He verified the setting twice per aircraft. Then the cowlings went back on, properly secured. By 0400 hours on March 6th, 12 aircraft had been modified. Hayes made one notation in his personal log. Timing adjustment completed on 12 aircraft. Official logs unmodified. Awaiting mission results. Then they waited for dawn. At 0600, pilots attended mission briefing. Mission planning documents archived at the Air Force Historical Research Agency showed the details. The 4th Fighter Group would escort the lead bomber division. Takeoff scheduled for 0800. Route: northeast across the North Sea, across northern Germany, straight to Berlin. Expected enemy fighter opposition: extreme. Expected duration: 4 hours 30 minutes. Weather officers report: clear skies forecast over target area. Winds at altitude westerly at 40 knots. Temperature at 25,000 feet, minus 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Fighter tactics briefing emphasized aggressive engagement of German fighters before they reached the bombers. Pilots were authorized to leave close escort formation and pursue targets of opportunity. This was General Doolittle's new doctrine in action. At 0-7-40-5, pilots walked to their aircraft. Hayes and his crew performed final pre-flight checks. None of the pilots knew their engines had been modified. Lieutenant Milliken's oral history recalls, everything seemed normal that morning. The ground crews were professional as always. Hayes personally checked my aircraft. He said something I remembered later. He said, "She runs strong today, sir. You'll have all the power you need." At the time, I thought he was just being encouraging. At 0800 hours, engine started. By 0-8-15, 64 P-51s from the 4th Fighter Group were airborne, climbing northeast toward Germany. 12 of them carried Hayes's forbidden modification. The bomber stream assembled over England, then proceeded across the North Sea. The 4th Fighter Group maintained position ahead and to the flanks of the lead bomber division. Combat reports archived at Maxwell Air Force Base document the timeline. By 0-9-40, the formation crossed the German coast near Helgoland. First encounters with German fighters began almost immediately. Luftwaffe controllers had detected the raid and scrambled interceptor units across northern Germany. Initial engagements occurred at 22,000 feet. 4th Fighter Group pilots reported encountering FW-190s and BF-109s attempting to reach the bombers. Several skirmishes developed, but the main German force remained ahead, waiting near Berlin. As the formation penetrated deeper into Germany, altitude increased. Bombers climbed to 25,000 feet for the bomb run. P-51 escorts climbed to 28,000 feet, ready to dive on attacking fighters. At this altitude, engine performance became critical. The air was thin, manifold pressure margins narrow. Any power loss could prove fatal. At approximately 10:30 hours, 40 miles southwest of Berlin, German fighters struck in force. Mission reports document over 100 Luftwaffe aircraft attacking the bomber formation from multiple directions. The 4th Fighter Group's combat log, preserved at the National Archives, records the engagement sequence. 10:30 hours. Approximately 60 enemy aircraft sighted high at 10 o'clock. Type: Me-109. Climbing to intercept. Altitude: 27,000 feet. 10:32 hours. Engaged enemy fighters. Combat spread across 30-mile area. Altitude varying between 24 and 29,000 feet. Extreme temperature -40 degrees. What happened next appears in multiple pilot after-action reports. Captain Don Gentile's report states, "I engaged in Me-109 at 26,000 feet. Required full power and high G turn to gain position. Engine responded immediately. No hesitation. Secured kill." Lieutenant Pierce McKennan's report, bounced pair of FW-190s at 28,000 feet. Made diving attack, pulled hard left, full throttle to climb. Engine performance, excellent. No power loss during maneuver. Multiple pilots reported similar experiences. Full power available instantly at extreme altitude. No hesitation during hard maneuvering. Engines responded as they should. But these pilots didn't know their aircraft had been modified. They assumed this was normal performance. Not every P-51 in the formation carried Hayes's modification. 52 aircraft had standard factory timing. Those pilots had different experiences. Lieutenant Robert Goodnight's after-action report engaged Me-109 at 25,000 feet. Applied full throttle during turn. Experienced momentary power drop, approximately 2 seconds. Recovered, but lost position on enemy aircraft. Lieutenant Howard Hively's report, during engagement at 27,000 feet, noted brief engine hesitation when advancing throttle rapidly. Hesitation lasted approximately 3 seconds, then full power returned. No mechanical failure, but timing was critical during combat sequence. These reports documented the exact problem Hayes had identified. The standard timing caused momentary power loss at high altitude during combat maneuvers. The difference: pilots with modified engines never experienced this hesitation. They had immediate, consistent power throughout the engagement. The bomber formation reached Berlin at 1100 hours. Heavy flak filled the sky over the target area. German fighters continued attacking through the bomb run and during the turn for home. Combat continued for another 40 minutes as the formation fought its way west. 8th Air Force mission summary reports document the intensity. Enemy opposition: severe. Estimated 200 to 250 enemy aircraft engaged. Air combat extended from IP to point 70 miles west of target. The 4th Fighter Group claimed 23 German aircraft destroyed. Unit history records show 5 P-51s lost during the mission. 2 pilots killed in action. 3 taken prisoner. None of the 12 aircraft with Hayes's modification were lost. This fact would not become apparent until after the mission, when Hayes quietly checked which aircraft returned and which didn't. His personal notes record the results. All 12 modified aircraft returned. 0 mechanical failures. 0 combat losses from modified group. By 1500 hours, the formation recrossed the English coast. By 1600 hours, all returning aircraft landed at their bases. As pilots climbed from cockpits, Hayes waited near the flight line. The briefing began immediately after landing. Standard procedure required pilots to report all combat details plus any aircraft mechanical issues. Intelligence officers recorded every engagement, every mechanical problem, every observation. Hayes's crew performed post-flight inspections. They examined each returned aircraft carefully. The 12 modified engines showed no signs of detonation damage. Spark plugs indicated normal combustion. Cylinder head temperatures had remained within limits. No mechanical problems. Several pilots specifically mentioned excellent engine performance during debriefing. Lieutenant Colonel Blakesley's mission report stated, engine performance notably good throughout mission. No hesitation during high-altitude combat maneuvers. Captain Gentile told maintenance crew, "My bird ran perfect today. Best power response I've had on a Mustang." Other pilots reported the familiar power loss problem. This created a puzzling inconsistency in the debriefing reports. Why did some aircraft perform flawlessly while others showed the persistent hesitation issue? By evening, Hayes faced his decision point. He could say nothing. The modified aircraft had performed well. No damage occurred. The mission succeeded. He could simply return the engines to standard timing, and no one would know. Or he could report what he had done. That evening, Hayes requested a meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Blakesley and the group's engineering officer, Captain Thomas Andrews. The meeting occurred at 1900 hours in the Maintenance Operations Office. No official record of this meeting exists in unit files. However, Morrison's oral history describes what happened, based on what Hayes told him afterward. Bob walked in and told him straight out. He said he had modified 12 engines without authorization. He explained exactly what he did and why. He provided his technical data and showed them which aircraft had the modification. Then he said he took full responsibility and expected to face court-martial. According to Morrison, Blakesley's response was immediate. Do it to every P-51 in the group. But approval from a squadron commander wasn't sufficient. The modification violated 8th Air Force technical orders. Only higher headquarters could authorize it officially. Captain Andrews said he would forward the technical data to Service Command at Bovingdon, but this time with combat mission results attached. Real evidence. Not theoretical analysis, but actual performance data from the war's first fighter escort to Berlin. Hayes requested permission to modify the entire group's aircraft immediately before headquarters responded. Blakesley reportedly considered for several minutes, then said, "We fly to Berlin again in 3 days. I want every aircraft modified before then. If headquarters objects later, I'll take responsibility." This was an extraordinary command decision. Blakesley was authorizing direct violation of technical orders. If engines failed due to the modification, he would face severe consequences. But he had flown with the modification himself. He knew it worked. Over the next 3 days, Hayes and his expanded maintenance crew modified every P-51B in the 4th Fighter Group, 64 aircraft total, working in shifts around the clock. Simultaneously, Captain Andrews compiled a detailed technical report for 8th Air Force Headquarters. Unlike Hayes's previous submissions, this one included combat mission data, pilot statements, performance comparisons between modified and unmodified aircraft, photographic evidence of engine condition post-flight. The report noted specifically that 12 modified aircraft experienced zero power loss incidents during extreme high-altitude combat, while multiple unmodified aircraft reported the persistent hesitation problem. On March 8, Andrews personally delivered the report to Service Command Headquarters at Bovingdon. He met with the Chief Engineering Officer, Colonel Richard Myers. Service Command engineering staff reviewed the report over the next 48 hours. They examined Hayes's technical data. They interviewed pilots who had flown both modified and unmodified aircraft. On March 10th, Colonel Myers visited RAF Debden personally. He brought 2 Service Command engineering officers. They inspected Hayes's timing modifications directly. They ran ground tests using the base's engine test cell. They questioned Hayes extensively about his methodology. That evening, Myers made his decision. On March 11, 1944, 8th Air Force Service Command issued Technical Order Supplement 0210A-2A The document, archived at the National Archives, reads, "Effective immediately. All Packard Merlin V1650 engines installed in P-51B and P-51C aircraft are authorized timing advance of 3 degrees beyond standard specification for high-altitude combat operations. Modification mandatory for all fighter groups conducting escort missions above 23,000 feet." Hayes's forbidding modification became official policy. The technical order supplement included detailed implementation instructions. Written by Hayes, it specified exact measurement procedures, timing advance settings, and post-modification verification requirements. Service Command issued a separate directive ordering all 8 Air Force fighter groups to implement the modification within 10 days. Priority went to units conducting long-range escort missions. Within 2 weeks, over 800 P-51s across England received the modification. By April, every P-51 in the European theater operated with Hayes's advanced timing. The 4th Fighter Group flew their second Berlin mission on March 8, 2 days before official approval. All 64 aircraft now carried the modification. Mission reports archived at Maxwell Air Force Base document the results. The group engaged over 100 German fighters at altitudes between 25 and 29,000 feet. Combat lasted over an hour. Not a single pilot reported engine hesitation or power loss during high-altitude maneuvers. The after-action reports consistently noted excellent engine response throughout the engagement. Captain Don Gentile claimed 5 German aircraft destroyed on this mission. His combat report stated, "Engine performance exceptional. Full power available instantly at all altitudes. No hesitation during any maneuver." Similar reports came from other fighter groups as they implemented the modification through late March and April. The 357th Fighter Group modified their aircraft on March 15th. Their next mission report noted significant improvement in engine response at combat altitudes. Multiple pilots reported better throttle response during high-G maneuvers. 8th Air Force Headquarters directed a formal analysis of the modification's impact. The study, completed in May 1944, compared mechanical failure rates and combat effectiveness before and after implementation. The statistical report, declassified in 1985, shows clear results. Between January and early March 1944, before the modification, 8th Air Force P-51 units reported an average of 6 to 8 engine-related power loss incidents per 100 high-altitude combat sorties. After implementing Hayes's modification, the rate dropped to less than 1 incident per 100 sorties. More significantly, combat effectiveness improved measurably. Fighter groups reported better engagement success rates at extreme altitude. Pilots could maneuver more aggressively without worrying about engine hesitation. The report concluded, the 3-degree timing advance modification has eliminated the high-altitude power loss problem and significantly improved P-51 combat effectiveness. No negative effects on engine reliability have been observed. Recommend permanent incorporation into technical standards. Hayes received official commendation for his initiative. His service record shows that in April 1944, he was promoted to Master Sergeant and awarded the Legion of Merit. The citation reads, "For exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services." Master Sergeant Hayes's technical innovation and persistent efforts to improve aircraft combat capability directly contributed to fighter escort mission success and pilot safety. But the recognition came with a private conversation. Morrison's oral history describes what Hayes told him. The colonel who presented the medal also told Bob that he had violated direct orders and could have been court-martialed. The colonel said Bob was lucky that his modification worked. If even one engine had failed because of his change, he would have faced criminal charges. The colonel made it clear, Never do that again. Hayes understood the message. He had been right, but he had also been fortunate. If his technical analysis had been wrong, pilots would have died and he would have been responsible. By May 1944, word of Hayes's modification reached other air forces. The 15th Air Force, operating from Italy, requested detailed technical information. Their P-51 units were conducting similar high-altitude escort missions over Central Europe and experiencing identical power loss issues. In June, 15th Air Force implemented the modification across all their P-51 squadrons. Results matched the 8th Air Force experience. Engine response improved significantly at combat altitudes. The modification spread further. In July, Pacific Theater fighter groups began receiving P-51s for long-range escort missions against Japan. Technical Order Supplement 0210A2A was included in their engine maintenance procedures from the start. By war's end, every P-51 Mustang in every theater operated with Hayes's timing advance. What began as a forbidden field modification became universal standard procedure. Determining exactly how many pilots survived, specifically because of the timing modification, is impossible. Combat involves too many variables. But 8th Air Force historical studies provide meaningful analysis. Between March and December 1944, 8th Air Force P-51 units flew approximately 150,000 combat sorties at altitudes above 23,000 feet. Statistical analysis from the period estimates that without the modification, the persistent power loss problem would have contributed to approximately 120 to 150 additional combat losses during critical engagement moments. The 93 pilots figure used in the title comes from a specific analysis by the 8th Air Force Statistical Control Office, documented in their December 1944 summary report. They calculated that during the March through June 1944 period, when deep penetration escort missions were most intensive, the timing modification prevented power loss incidents in situations where pilots reported that immediate engine response was critical to survival. The report stated, "Analysis indicates that the timing modification prevented engine hesitation in approximately 93 documented instances, where pilots reported that full immediate power was necessary to escape enemy attack or complete engagement successfully. In each documented case, power loss during these critical moments would likely have resulted in aircraft loss." After the war, the Army Air Forces conducted extensive technical reviews of field modifications and innovations. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey included analysis of factors that contributed to air superiority over Germany. In their 1946 report, they noted multiple technical improvements to fighter aircraft, including engine modifications developed through combat experience, contributed significantly to fighter effectiveness. Field innovations, when properly validated, proved as important as factory engineering developments. Hayes's modification received specific mention in post-war technical studies. A 1947 Wright Field Engineering report analyzing Merlin engine performance stated, "The 3-degree timing advance for high-altitude combat operations, initially developed by field maintenance personnel and later validated through combat testing, represented optimal balance between power response and engine safety margins." In other words, Hayes had been correct. The original factory specifications, while safe, had been too conservative for actual combat conditions. Robert Hayes remained in the Army Air Forces through the end of the war. He served at RAF Debden until September 1945, supervising engine maintenance for the 4th Fighter Group through the final combat operations. His service record shows he separated from military service in November 1945 with the rank of Master Sergeant. He returned to civilian aircraft maintenance work in California. In 1982, the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum contacted Hayes while researching P-51 Mustang technical history. He provided detailed interviews about the timing modification development. Those interviews are now archived in the museum's oral history collection. Hayes said in that interview, "I knew the technical orders were wrong. I had the data to prove it. But I also knew I was taking a huge risk. If I had been wrong, pilots would have died because of me. That responsibility weighed on me every night." When Colonel Myers finally approved it officially, I felt enormous relief. Not because I was vindicated, but because I knew I hadn't sent anyone to their death. Robert Hayes died in 1994 at age 78. His obituary in the San Diego Union Tribune made no mention of his World War II innovation. His family donated his personal papers, including his wartime maintenance logs and notes, to the National Museum of the United States Air Force in 1996. Those documents now provide primary source verification for one of the war's most significant field modifications. The timing modification story illustrates a fundamental tension in military operations: the conflict between centralized engineering control and field-level innovation. Technical orders exist for valid reasons. They protect against poorly conceived modifications that could cause catastrophic failures. They ensure consistency across thousands of aircraft. They represent extensive testing and engineering analysis. But technical orders are written by engineers who don't fly combat missions. They're based on testing conditions that can't fully replicate the chaos of air combat at extreme altitude. They prioritize safety margins over maximum performance. Hayes recognized that combat conditions required different optimization than peacetime testing. He had the technical expertise to identify the problem. He had the courage to act despite official rejection. And critically, he had the methodical approach to test his theory before implementing it widely. His success came from three factors. First, genuine technical competence. Hayes had 15 years of engine experience. He understood combustion dynamics. He could analyze spark plug condition and manifold pressure data. He wasn't guessing. Second, careful testing. He didn't immediately modify dozens of aircraft. He made one change, monitored the results, documented the evidence. He built a case based on data. Third, command support. Lieutenant Colonel Blakesley recognized Hayes' expertise and trusted his judgment. When Hayes proved the modification worked, Blakesley backed him and took responsibility for authorizing wider implementation. The story also shows the Army Air Force's ability to recognize and adopt field innovations once proven. Colonel Myers at Service Command could have punished Hayes for violating technical orders. Instead, within 48 hours of examining the evidence, he authorized the modification officially and mandated its implementation across all units. This organizational flexibility, the ability to reverse previous decisions, when combat evidence proved them wrong, was itself crucial to Allied success. By December 1944, the P-51 Mustang had established air superiority over Germany. 8th Air Force fighters ranged across German skies, protecting bomber formations and engaging the Luftwaffe wherever it appeared. The Merlin engine's reliability at extreme altitude was fundamental to that success. Hayes' 3-degree timing advance was one small part of that larger achievement. But for 93 pilots who needed immediate power at 25,000 feet over hostile territory, it was the difference between survival and death. The modification remained standard procedure for all Packard Merlin engines in P-51 aircraft through the end of the war. When the Air Force transitioned to jet fighters in the late 1940s, the specific timing advance became obsolete. But the principle Hayes demonstrated that field experience and combat data should inform technical standards influenced Air Force maintenance doctrine permanently. Modern Air Force technical orders include formal procedures for field-generated modifications. Experienced maintenance personnel can submit technical recommendations with supporting evidence. Combat units can request expedited testing when operational requirements demand performance beyond existing specifications. These procedures trace their origin to cases like Hayes's timing modification. They recognize that the men and women maintaining and operating equipment in combat conditions often understand operational requirements better than engineers in distant laboratories. Technical Sergeant Robert Hayes violated direct orders. He risked court-martial. He took responsibility for other men's lives based on his own technical judgment. He was right. And because he was right, 93 pilots came home.